Hi, Kana here, and today I'll be talking about everything you need to know to play Yinlin, the new 5-star Electro Superstar. Yinlin is definitely one of the most anticipated characters that WutheringWaves has to offer, and it's not hard to see why. She has insane damage potential, a terrific design, and also one of the most solid weapons that the game has released. In this video, I'll be going over Yinlin's kit, how to play her, her best weapon and echoes, the best pairings for her, where she shines, and more. Let's break it down. Yinlin's kit is pretty straightforward, but some of the wording might confuse you. Her outro skill benefits Electro and Resonance Liberation, aka ultimate damage, so long as the next character stays on field and doesn't swap. This means that characters like Calcaro synergize extremely well with her, and in general, any character that appreciates being on field and increasing their Resonance Liberation damage would also pair very well with her. Her intro skill, like most other DPS intros, is not that important since it's such a small contribution to her total damage share. But on to her Resonance Liberation, which is pretty important for her core gameplay. It's a damage ability, who knew? Unfortunately, it does also apply a Sinner's Mark, which we'll get into right now. Yinlin's kit revolves around her Forte circuit and applying marks to the enemy. This includes one of two things, also known as Sinner or Punishment Marks. A Sinner's Mark is an effect applied a couple of ways, but only exists to transform into Punishment Marks. You can apply this mark through a variety of means, including her ultimate, but the goal of applying this mark is to transform it into a Punishment Mark, and then this will affect how Yinlin's skills behave. In some cases, like with her inherent passives, using Yinlin's resonance skill on a target with a punishment mark increases the damage dealt and also increases her attack for 4 seconds. Another feature of her Forte circuit is that when a target bearing a punishment mark is hit, electro damage will hit all targets that currently possess a punishment mark in addition to the initial enemy. To be clear, this does include when allies that aren't Yinlin attacks enemies with punishment marks as well. But disclaimer though, a very important aspect of Yinlin's kit is the fact that her Sinner's Mark, not to be confused with punishment marks, do disappear when Yinlin leaves the field. So make sure to transform these marks before you swap her out. Yinlin's resonance skill is a pretty decent damaging ability, especially when you consider that it's multi-targeting, but that's just one part of its features, since it also enhances Yinlin's basic attacks or dodge counters to also trigger an electro hit as well. Moving forward, her basic and mid-air attack do both deal decent electro damage. However, her heavy attack when paired with a full Forte circuit does transform all sin marks to punishment, and that's the overarching goal of her game plan. This is typically where she gets branded as a hybrid or not main field occupying damage dealer, and you'll see why when I explain how to play her right now. Playing her is not actually as complex as the breakdown of her kit was earlier, but here's what the game plan is. In team compositions where Yinlin is designed to be off-field or not occupy as much time as the main damage dealer, your goal is to apply Yinlin's Sinner Mark, transform it into a punishment mark, and then go nuts as you deal a load of damage and activate her outro effect. In practical usage, what that could look like is something similar to swapping in and then activating her intro, casting her Resonance Liberation, using her resonance skill, then using her basics until she can heavy attack and transform the marks into punishment marks. After they've transformed, look to put her resonance skill on cooldown again before activating your echo, and then canceling the long animation of it, or don't, followed by swapping her out and using her outro skill to buff the next ally. Very complicated if you want to min-max her properly, but realistically just get the punishment mark, use your outro skill whenever you can, and bada bing bada boom, you've kept it simple. Her kit and weapon do show similar intentions, with her gaining attack when you aren't swapped to her, but let's not get ahead of ourselves right now. Now, of course, there are plenty of ways to play any kind of character in WutheringWaves, but as you saw from the earlier section, Yinlin appears to be more of a supplementary or not really on-field at all times kind of damage dealer. And that's because at the moment, there is no real cut and dry rotation with Yinlin, where it actually rewards or pays her to be on-field for longer. However, if you want to spend all of your time and resources making her deal big damage and having her on field at all times, that works too. Just buff her up with characters and then go wild. Okay, now while we mentioned it a little bit earlier, let's actually get to the dedicated section about weapons. Yinlin is no different, and damn, Stringmaster is pretty good. Not only does this weapon have more stats than the 4 stars, it has crit rate and has a lot of damage increasing passives which make it super ideal. Pair this with the fact that it already synergizes really nicely with some of Yinlin's resonance skill centric gameplay, and man, you've really got a perfect match for something that you should be pulling for while also pulling for Yinlin. Now if you don't have String Master, that's okay. If you have something like Cosmic Ripples, it is pretty good, and as you could tell, you do still gain things like damage bonuses and energy regen, which is okay. It just feels a little bit bad because you're missing out on the crit rate. If you're looking for a 4-star option though, Jinzo Keeper is really solid because it increases the user's attack, and it was also pickable from the 4-star initial weapon selector that everyone got at the start of the game for launch rewards. Augment is another super solid choice since it does flow better with how Yinlin would be played, and it also has crit as its main stat. That being said, it is the battle pass weapon and you only get one of them, so if you choose to not buy the battle pass, or if you ended up using your battle pass weapon on something like the broad blade or whatever one of the other options are, it is the battle pass weapon though, so if you didn't end up buying the battle pass, or if you ended up using it on something else, by all means, you don't have to use Augment, although the crit main stat is very valuable, especially on a character like Yinlin. That being said, if you're really desperate, you could end up upgrading something like Rectifier of Night or the Voyager, since both pretty much do okay as moderate increases to stats when you don't have access to 4 stars. Now, I said all that, however, if you are going to be pulling for Yinlin, her weapon is pretty solid and kind of worth considering, especially since it also works pretty well alongside Encore. But otherwise, personally, choosing between Augment or Jinzo Keeper, if you aren't going to be pulling for a 5-star, is likely what you'll land on, especially with how accessible and how good they are in terms of stat value and passive effects, especially at this point in the game. Talking about echoes is actually going to be a bit tough this time around. Now, Yinlin herself has a couple options when it comes to sets, but recently there's been a lot of discussion surrounding the various echo builds when it comes to WutheringWaves. If you aren't familiar with the echo system, here's a quick rundown. Currently, you have 12 costs, and each of these echoes has a specific cost attached to them, and it's your job to try and min-max to hit the 12 cost or be below the 12 cost while also gaining value from your echoes. Now, the ins and outs of the system do actually make it much more complex than this, but let's just break it down specifically for Yinlin. 4 cost echoes have the special trait of being able to roll crit rate or crit damage. 3 cost echoes have the special trait of being able to roll elemental damage, and all echoes, regardless of cost, can roll attack percent as their main, and therefore that is what the 1 cost echoes are going to be running since they don't have access to things like crit or element damage. Still with me? Well, the thing about echoes too is that they are actually quite difficult to obtain. 3 cost echoes are the most difficult to farm for since they're all around the map, and there really aren't that many to choose from or farm out in general. 4 and 1 cost echoes are easier since there are more of them, or you can sit in front of a boss and simply farm their soul guaranteed after every other kill. But this annoying gap in how hard it is to actually get a good 3-star echo has led to the popularity of something called a 4-4-1-1-1 build. The numbers in this case refer to the cost of the echoes, and as you can see, it is 4-4-1-1-1. And by comparison, the traditional ideal setup is 4-3-3-1-1. The traditional setup is popular since it maximizes the 12 total capacity we're given and also allows us to make use of element damage. But on the flip side, the 4-4-1-1-1 build leaves you with 1 cost left over and only makes use of crit alongside attack percent main stats. To be clear, there are plenty of builds that work, but the reason that the 4-4-1-1-1 build is being addressed here is because farming the 3 cost echoes, especially for a character like Yinlin, is going to be terrible. Now, we don't know exactly what echo changes they'll be releasing in 1.1 to combat the issues that people have been describing when farming out echoes, but 4-4-1-1-1 gives you 2 crit and 3 main stats, whereas 4-3-3-1-1 gives you 1 crit rate, 2 element damage, and 2 attack. Sorry, I know a lot of this sounds like gibberish, but for the sake of showing the difference in damage though, here's the damage comparison of the 2 builds on the rover. Thank you to Pridewind for doing the math. You can see that the difference in DPS is about a couple thousand, 2,000 specifically. And while this difference is pretty noticeable, keep in mind that it is way easier to farm and also allows you to set up potential future builds, since every character will eventually want a crit main or an attack main echo. Enough stalling though, let's talk about Yinlin. For main stats, the average Yinlin build on 4-3-3-1-1 will run a 4-cost crit rate or crit damage echo, depending on the spread of stats that you have or the weapon that you're using. The 3-cost echoes will be double electro damage to synergize with her element, and the 1-cost echoes will have attack percent since she's a damage dealer. A lot of this is plain and simple, which makes sense since she's just an electro damage dealer. But speaking on substats, what you're actually looking for is maybe 1 or 2 rolls of crit rate if you're being greedy. Honestly though, until we see the echo changes, prioritizing getting even a singular crit sub is probably all that you could bargain for right now. And outside of that, having attack percent is nice, but it is really difficult right now to be picky, especially when we're this early on in the game. And tacit fields are so underwhelming when it comes to rewards and barely give us any echo exp at all, despite being our main source of it. Anyways, maintaining as close of a ratio of 1 to 2 when it comes to crit rate and crit damage, and letting everything else go so that you don't lose your mind and getting baited with resources is the go-to play here. Now, if you are a whale looking for a minimum of both crit and crit damage alongside attack, and then min-maxing to get something like resonance skill damage is definitely the goal, but good luck finding that. Now, the reason for the spread of substats is that Yinlin is a damage dealer, so of course she's going to need the crit, attack, etc. But also keep in mind that she is primarily resonance damage, so if you can find it, keep it, it's good. Yinlin has a few good pairings at the moment, but none stand out as perfectly as Yinlin Calcharo. The dynamic duo has been theorized and playtested even before the game's release to complement each other very, very well. And it's straightforward. Buff the electro guy with the electro buffer. The two go even further to complement each other though, because of Yinlin wanting to buff an electro character who also wants to take advantage of a resonance liberation ultimate damage increase. And what do you know, he does 53% of his total damage as resonance liberation. Calcharo is definitely a more difficult or a challenging character to play compared to main DPSs like Gion and Encore, but the reward is huge since he technically has 2 sources of damage increases with Yinlin's outro effect. And she also covers some of his issues with AoE, which is definitely a big pain point when it comes to Calcharo. There also have been speculations towards using Encore alongside Yinlin, since you can basically swap the two out with each other all the time and make use of Yinlin's burst damage, but this team is a bit more experimental and needs more testing. That being said, the concept of the team is similar to that of Rover plus Encore, where you get to abuse long animations from each character and minimize time spent in animations by spamming skills or resonance liberations. Given how high the damage ceiling is for both of these characters, this is a team that will likely see more play as characters get invested in more and more, but at her release, using Yinlin as an electro buffer, a resonance liberation buffer, or just as a burster herself will definitely see great value. Anyways guys, that's going to be it for my Yinlin guide. If you guys enjoyed, if you learned something, make sure to like, comment, turn on the notification bell, and subscribe. I'm really excited to be playing her. I think she's very exciting. I hope you guys enjoyed her as well. As always, however you choose to play this character, feel free to do so. This is just my guide for those of you that are interested or trying to learn how to play her a little bit. Hope you have been having fun with WutheringWaves. And if you are, make sure to like, comment, turn on the notification bell, and subscribe. I'll see you on the next one. Stay safe, stay healthy. Adios. Hey, before you leave, you should click on this video because YouTube really thinks that you would like this video. I think you would also like this video. I think Yinlin would also think that you would like this video, so you should click on it. Anyways, thanks for watching.